My sister wants to reconcile after years of deception and bullying that forced me to change schools. Her parents sent her to therapy, and now my wife wants me to forgive her. But it's still hard for me to accept. My 29-year-old wife is pressuring me to make apologies. Out of my 4 siblings, sisters 36, 34, 30, and me, 27, I am the youngest. Lisa, my 30-year-old sister, mistreated me both mentally and physically. At school, she would belittle me in an attempt to gain favor with her peers. By the time I was in the 5th grade, it had evolved from her calling me names. She exposes my private parts to a group of female friends by pantsing me in front of the girls. When I was a young person, she would repeatedly hit me with a belt. When I got bigger than her, she would leave me bleeding. And when she was unable to subdue me physically, she started to circulate terrible stories about me, including that I was a gay, a bestial, and a sexual deviant. She was treating me pretty badly, but the professors didn't think I was telling them the truth. They believed that I was fabricating the entire story because my sister consistently receives excellent grades. Indeed, I receive excellent scores as well, but it didn't appear to concern them. She was supported at home by the school's disciplinary officer, who you would think would take this seriously. It seemed as though my sister had changed completely. In front of our parents, she pretended to be tearful and said that I was the one who was being cruel. She was also really kind to me in front of them, which made it seem like I was the issue, which was incredibly annoying. The nice thing is that my parents were able to see right through her act. Even though they were unable to persuade the school of what was going on, they took action since they recognized something wasn't right. I was relieved when they chose to transfer me to a different school, as it would free me from her constant presence. They made an effort to persuade the school to comprehend and assist, but the administration offered them absolutely no support. Simply put, they were blind to what was happening in front of them. My parents, therefore, made sure that my sister and I remained apart even at home by having us reside in different areas of the house. In an attempt to find the truth, they even sent my sister to counseling, but she never acknowledged any of the cruel things she had done. Despite everything, my parents decided it would be better for me to attend a different school in the same city, if only to avoid the drama caused by my sister's cruel remarks and actions toward me. I also found it awkward to invite friends over to our house. It wasn't cool at all that she would start telling them all these embarrassing things about me right away, as if she had a radar for this. At school, my sister had a lot of popularity. She had some celebrity status, and people paid attention to her. To make matters worse, they would approach me and inquire about the bizarre or shameful things she claimed I had done over the weekend. She would turn it around and tell everyone that I was trying to be someone I'm not if I ever wore a t-shirt to school in an attempt to just blend in and be normal. Then, believing they had a valid cause to be cruel, those individuals would treat me even worse. However, there is a bright side. This was all before people became addicted to social media and their phones. It was thus like entering a completely new planet when I eventually had the opportunity to travel to a university on the opposite side of the nation. I could stop caring about all the drama and simply be myself. Throughout my time at university, my parents provided me with a lot of support and even helped me find a therapist. It made a lot of the stuff easier for me to start working through. I was feeling self-conscious about my appearance and found it difficult to trust people. I've come a long way since high school, yet I still struggle with some of these emotions. After some time, my sister eventually came clean about how she had treated me, first to our family and then to a therapist. Everyone was taken aback, particularly my elder sisters. They had always assumed that my stories about how she was treating me were entirely made up. They never really stood up for me either, never really intervened or tried to stop her from being mean. I feel like I could live a happy life without seeing my sisters, but I'm incredibly close to my parents now that everything has happened. Though, to be honest, I'm not too keen on the notion. My older sister Sarah and my other sisters have tried to put things right and mend our connection. For me, life has moved on. I married my wonderful wife Audrey last year. Our studies were completed. I even completed law school and began working in our new life. I decided to elope with Audrey for our wedding. All we did was invite our parents to a little ceremony, keeping things really basic, in part due to an amusing incident in which I neglected to exercise caution. We decided to go ahead and be married in a spontaneous moment, which kind of accelerated our choice. A little while later, Audrey and I were welcomed into a new chapter in our life when we were bestowed with a stunning daughter. But this new situation created a new problem for my sisters, particularly Lisa. They wanted to be involved in our daughter's life, so they weren't just attempting to patch things up for the sake of our history. One day, after a demanding workday, I arrived home to find Audrey sitting at the dinner table, her expression solemn. She held a letter from Lisa that she wanted to read to me before revealing in case it included the same kind of turmoil that we've been working to put behind us. Lisa wrote a thoughtful and insightful letter. She talked in her writing about having experienced abuse, something she had never previously disclosed, something that had happened outside of our family. She described how this aspect of her life had influenced her behavior towards me badly and how it caused my relationships with my sisters to fall apart. By talking to our family about everything and trying to get things straight before coming to me directly, Lisa had also made a big step. My first reaction upon reading the letter was probably a little bit of contempt. Even with a confession as serious as this one, it's difficult to just turn feelings on or off. My wife Audrey made the wise decision that we should consult a counselor so that we could work through some issues together. Similar to a handbook for difficult talks, we refer to this person as a therapist. After we arrived, the therapist requested some time to speak with me alone. As a result of things my sister did when we were younger, I ended up talking a lot about the difficult periods I went through. The therapist acknowledged my concerns, offered some guidance, and advised me to continue processing my emotions. It seemed to me that they were only saying that to entice me to return and spend more money, you know? They also said that I ought to make an effort to overlook my sister's actions. Even so, it doesn't mean that we immediately go back to our normal routine. Audrey now suggests that we all get together in a public place, such as a park, and that we even bring our young one along in the hopes of sorting things out and letting the past go. I thought, no way, because just thinking about being close to my sister makes me super stressed, and I don't want to end up losing my cool. Although Audrey didn't press me too hard at the time, she has gradually been encouraging me to consider pardoning my sister. Furthermore, my sisters have made a lot more effort to communicate with one another. Not only am I receiving emails, letters, and texts from them, but Audrey is also receiving them, wanting to talk to us so that maybe we can work things out. They seem genuinely interested in helping to make things right, but I'm not sure I'm ready for that just yet. All right, so I'd had enough after receiving yet another email from Lisa. I sent her a formal letter that basically said, "Stop talking to me, my spouse and our child, or I may need to file a lawsuit over this." Telling someone, "Hey, this is serious," is how it feels. Give us some space, but in a way that conveys your seriousness and formality. Things got quite tense at home after I did this. Audrey didn't think I handled things very well. Despite everything, I should give my sister an opportunity to apologize to me directly. Audrey thinks Lisa, who's been through a difficult period of her own, deserves the opportunity to put things right. Subsequently, an event transpired that further confused matters. I was just running errands this past weekend, buying up some food for the family. I didn't recognize the car I saw in our driveway when I arrived back. I felt as though I understood what was going on, and my heart fell a little. Indeed, I was correct. My elder sister was there when I entered. I noticed red. I was furious. Not only was it because she was present, but it also seemed as though my boundaries were irrelevant. I had to tell her and her spouse to get out of there immediately. I feel as though I am entitled to choose who I want and don't want in my life, particularly in light of all that has transpired. However, there's this whole problem right now with Audrey being irritated and my sister unexpectedly showing up. There's a lot to handle. Audrey had done something major without telling me, and I was furious with her for it. Despite the unpleasant past of our home, she allowed my sister to visit. It was similar like organizing an unexpected party that you did not want. I became really irate, and as a result, we got into a heated quarrel. I became so angry that I even stated something quite severe, telling her that if she ever did that again without telling me, I might consider ending our relationship. Audrey apologized, but my anger persisted and I was unable to let it go. In the end, I worked on projects in the basement the entire weekend in an attempt to keep myself occupied and distract myself from my situation. When you're really angry, all you want is to be by yourself. I was that person, and that's the issue. I feel completely stuck. I have the impression that everyone is attempting to steer me in one way by asking me to forget about it and forgive my sister. I truly don't want to forgive her, though, deep down. It would be similar to if your beloved game or toy was purposefully damaged and everyone just accepted it. It's challenging, and I'm not sure what to do at this time. Before reading the update, my wife thought that I should be able to forgive her and that she and my sister ought to go together in public with the kid. Your spouse is not correct. Your sister is only permitted to enter your life on your terms and does not see your child if you are not at ease. The dysfunctional relationship between my sister-in-law and husband would make a great book. She is a terrible, two-faced person who has the entire world at her mercy. Nobody thought she was capable of doing the things she has, and she has rewritten history to paint herself as the victim. Not at all, she says. As a mother, she made an effort to be a friend to her children so that they could play together. Nope. As a family compromise, her husband has her on Facebook, but they haven't communicated in years. Additionally, the woman is unable to see her children. Your wife must learn how to set limits. Her actions were completely unacceptable. Though I'm sure Audrey had excellent intentions, I can't think of a more flawed strategy. She came to apologize and expressed her regrets without providing any credentials. However, I fail to see how she thought that would work. My sister's husband attempted to take offense, and both of them have puzzled expressions on their faces. It was just such an odd circumstance. Your spouse is adopting the belief that family comes first. I was exactly the same way once. Following my initial announcement of pregnancy, I attempted to make amends. My spouse expressed his disapproval, but I was free to move forward on my own. It was an extremely foolish decision that we quickly regretted. It became abundantly evident that she was at ease with the actions she had taken. In fact, she attempted to disprove my own recollections by taking advantage of the opening I provided. It was obvious that her only priorities were getting to see my kids and maintaining a flawless Facebook profile. I was your wife once. We needed her, I reasoned, to be a family and to make sure we were all content. It destroys my mother-in-law, I know that. She will never get to see her grandchildren all at once. However, we don't. Without her, we are happy, even in the event that she is decent. I have peace of mind knowing that woman has no influence or place in our lives. Explain to your wife again how much damage your sister has done. And then, even if you choose to forgive her for your own peace, you do not want her in your lives. Any attempts to reach out by your wife will be regarded as betrayal. My wife is also very much of the mentality that we should try and create a big family for our daughter, which I'm not too worried about. My parents have been good at keeping the peace and staying out of the whole fight. My wife, as much as I love her, can be really naive. Now for the updates. Update. Well, I don't know where to begin. A little bit ago, I shared some stuff online about a big argument I had with my wife, Audrey. People gave a lot of advice and comments on it. Fast forward to recently. I decided to sit down and chat with Audrey because honestly, I was still pretty steamed about everything that went down. So we start talking, and out of nowhere, Audrey starts saying sorry and bringing up stuff that sounded super familiar, like exactly the kind of things people online were saying to me. Then she drops this surprise she had been looking up advice for our situation online. Stumbled upon my post. Yep, the one I thought was my secret venting session and realized it was me talking about us. Thankfully, I was smart enough to use a fake name when I posted, so my secret identity was still safe. We had a real talk about everything. Audrey was really upset and ended up crying, and I was there munching on my snack, feeling a mix of being glad she understood but also a bit bummed out. I was looking forward to having this big dramatic moment where I could lay it all out there, but the conversation ended up being more of a quiet, emotional one instead of the dramatic showdown I had in my head. So during our talk, Audrey shared something pretty personal that added a whole new layer to why she was so upset. She told me about her aunt, someone her own mom doesn't talk to anymore. Audrey really didn't want our situation to turn into something like that, where we just cut family members out and never speak to them again. That's a big part of why she got so emotional and why she was apologizing. She was scared our family could end up divided like hers. But here's where things got even more complicated. While we were talking about all this, Audrey mentioned something about meeting up with my sisters. At first, I thought she meant the unexpected visit at our house, but then I realized she meant something else. So I asked her to explain a bit more about what she meant by meeting my sisters. Turns out, Audrey had actually met up with my sisters before, all except for Lisa. And get this, her school is right near where my sister works. I had no idea about any of this. They had been grabbing coffee and lunch together a few times, and my middle sister even joined them once. This was all news to me, and it added a whole new twist to the story. So there I was, finding out something that totally blew my lid off again. It's about how my wife, Audrey, didn't just run into my oldest sister by accident. Nope. It turns out my older sister knew exactly who Audrey was when they bumped into each other. How? Well, my mom had given my sister pictures of Audrey, so she recognized her right away and went up to say hi. You can probably guess how I felt about that. Betrayed, mad, you name it. So I did what I usually do when I'm fuming. I headed straight to my man cave. That's my chill zone in the basement where I can hang out, maybe smoke a cigar and just try to cool down with some friends over after I manage to simmer down a bit. I went back to talk to Audrey, and guess what? She tried to smooth things over by ordering some Chinese food, thinking it might help calm things down. And believe it or not, it kind of worked. We ended up talking more and I was straight up with her. I told her if anything like this happened again, I'd really have to rethink our whole marriage situation. Then she started to spill the whole story. And let me tell you, it was a lot to take in. Lisa's actions have really thrown everything into chaos. She made some pretty serious and untrue claims about my middle sister's husband, saying things that were totally false and calling him things he's not. Then things got even more out of hand when she hurt my youngest nephew. He was just being a typical little kid, making noise and watching TV. When Lisa decided to react way too harshly by front kicking him, I remember too well that kicking was something Lisa often did. It was like her go-to move for dealing with things, which is just not okay. After she kicked my nephew, my sister's husband didn't let it slide. He stepped in immediately, and things escalated to the point where my mom had to call the police. The police came, and because of what happened, Lisa was taken away for a psychological evaluation. Instead of pressing criminal charges against her, the decision was made for her to spend some time in a psychiatric facility to get the help she clearly needs. For now, she's not allowed to be in contact with any of us, which is probably for the best given everything that's happened. It's a lot to process, and it's really sad to see how one person's actions can affect so many people around them. Learning that Lisa was diagnosed with several mental health issues wasn't exactly a surprise to me. I've always made it super clear to my parents that I don't want to hear anything about Lisa. No news, no updates, nothing. So I didn't know about her condition until now. But yeah, now it's out in the open. My sister has serious mental health problems, and everyone in the family is aware of it. What really got to me, though, was finding out that Audrey knew about the whole situation and still thought it was a good idea for me to try and patch things up with Lisa. The idea of my child being anywhere near Lisa absolutely not happening. I made it crystal clear to Audrey that Lisa is off the table for discussions. It's not happening. She's too unpredictable, and I'm not convinced by any means that her actions are just an act. She's shown herself to be really dangerous, and there's no way I'm going to risk it. So I told Audrey straight up, we need to drop the whole Lisa topic. It's a dead end, and I'm not budging on this. It's too risky. And my priority is keeping our family safe and away from any potential harm Lisa could cause. Emily. She recognized the tough battles my oldest sister had to fight, grappling with the reality that for the sake of her husband and kids' safety, they needed to keep their distance from Lisa. The rule became apparent Lisa could only be present at family occasions if they were in public areas with many of people nearby. Essentially, to ensure there were witnesses to her actions, she was explicitly barred from visiting their home as well as my parents. And any interaction has to place away from private settings. Direct interaction with the children or her brother-in-law was entirely off limits. My middle sister issue demonstrated just how harmful Lisa's influence might be. Her husband was dragged through the mud, accused of crimes he never done. All thanks to Lisa's competence to craft a realistic but wholly fake narrative. This nearly led to my sister and her husband getting divorced. He steadfastly claimed his innocence throughout the process. The convincing tone of Lisa's narration originally had some doubting, thinking maybe there was an affair. However, Lisa's downfall was in the details. Her story, though first convincing, started to crumble when she couldn't verify her claims with any real evidence, which eventually helped clear my brother-in-law's name and showed everyone just how far from reality Lisa's accusations were. There was a coordinated action to safeguard all parties once the complete scope of Lisa's behavior was revealed and the harm she inflicted on the family was established. My sister's husbands adopted a strong attitude and forbade Lisa from ever seeing their houses or interacting in any way with their kids. In the end, Lisa lived alone and received the support she required from routine treatment visits. These revelations confirmed my long-held worries and feelings against her, which some had subsequently questioned or misinterpreted. My sisters said they wanted to rebuild the bridges that had burned after the smoke cleared and the truth was revealed. I was by no means eager to begin a reconciliation, though. I was disengaged and wary of resurrecting old wounds or going back to painful memories. My sisters became interested in Audrey at this period of uncertainty and hesitation on my behalf, perceiving her as a potentially more approachable way to patch things up. Sensing the delicate nature of the issue and maybe the possibility of future misunderstandings or confrontation, my mother recommended taking more precautions. If a reconciliation attempt or meeting was to take place, in her opinion, it ought to be made freely and without coercion, giving me the freedom to choose for myself. My mother made this proposal, and it made sense to me. It seemed like a less intrusive and more considerate method of handling the sensitive dynamics in play. If given the option, I would have chosen this course of action since it recognized the complexity of the circumstance and my independence in navigating it. Audrey prodded me into a meeting with my sisters, in spite of my reservations and the conflicting emotions circling this family drama. She thought that could help with some healing, or at the very least, establish a line of communication. I reluctantly accepted her proposition, but not before laying out my requirements. Audrey would not be involved, and I wanted there to be no expectations during the encounter. We chose to meet at a familiar local pub, so I had planned to arrive an hour early to get settled, and possibly have a pint or two to help calm my anxieties. On the Saturday afternoon of the meeting, I was sitting in the pub, having already had a few pints. My stomach turns at the thought of the conversation that is about to happen. We started off with what can only be described as awkward, small conversation when my sisters arrived. It didn't take me long to realize that their spouses were also present, surreptitiously seated at a different table, a move that took me by surprise. I asked them to come hang out with us. We might as well do this as a group if we were going to do it, it felt. The atmosphere gradually changed while we were together. My sisters shared updates and anecdotes about everyone's activities while pulling out pictures of their children. They also expressed their pride in me for choosing to pursue a legal career. Though stiff at first, the talk loosened up as we caught up on one another's lives. Even if it was a tiny step, it was nonetheless a move in the right direction toward comprehension and possibly even reconciliation. My middle sister beat me to the punch just as I was getting ready for what felt like a moment from a movie, when I would finally get to release all of my pent-up emotions. My oldest sister and her husband joined her in her apology as she began to apologize as if there was no tomorrow. Her husband even grasped my hand and apologized to me directly. It felt as though the script had been changed without my knowledge as I stood there ready for a spectacular, cathartic moment. My shining moment was stolen from me, and I had to quickly assimilate everything. So I turned to my pint glass for comfort. My sisters' and brother-in-law's confessions and apologies combined to create an endless circle of, "We are sorry and Lisa is the worst." They admit the suffering and upheaval Lisa brought about for the entire family, not just for me, and how it affected my early years. Our moment of what I can only characterize as tipsy inspiration transformed the afternoon into nightfall as we navigated through years of unresolved concerns. I proposed that we snap a group picture to email to our parents. I realized that it had been a very long time since they had seen all of their kids together. Naturally, given my current condition, I never stopped to consider the possible consequences of this concept. At the time, it looked like a kind and sincere gesture. However, when I look back, I can't help but question if intoxicated. Me hadn't given the picture we took enough thought, full of joy and a unique instance of unanimity, become more of a deal than I had thought. After a long time, my parents were ecstatic to see us all together, and they immediately told Audrey about this significant occasion. Her calls began to ring through my phone. In the messages she left, her voice was filled with a mixture of delight and sadness. I still wasn't very fond of her, but this photo obviously touched someone. Then an idea was floated, lifted by the spirits and the unexpected warmth of the evening. My sisters are throwing a joint birthday party and family reunion next month. I agreed in my less than sober state, much to my regret thereafter. My parents and Audrey were informed of this news, which quickly went viral. They were taken aback and thrilled by the abrupt change in circumstances. I awoke the following morning feeling a mixture of regret for what I had committed to and hangover. After all the drama and tension, the idea of a family get-together did not sound very pleasant. However, I hesitated when I saw my parents happy and realized that we might be able to overcome our differences. I realized that even though my rage was justifiable, it was dragging me down and creating a cloud over my family. Realizing this, I started to view the approaching event as a chance rather than a compromise. Maybe it was time to begin releasing my hold on my bitterness, for the benefit of the people I care about, not for myself. All of its complexity and difficulties included, the idea of getting back in touch with my family now felt like a worthwhile endeavor. It might be a first step toward my family's and my own healing, if nothing else. There was one last question that I couldn't seem to get rid of as the evening came to an end, and we prepared to part ways. Why, in the past, hadn't they believed me? I asked them this question, and their response served as a kind of wake-up call for all of us. It all came down to Lisa's abilities to muddy the waters with her persuasive storytelling. She had a talent for weaving stories that made it difficult to determine who was telling the truth, and the most of the time. In the end, it was me who was placed at fault. I told them how the entire experience with Lisa had left me with more than just unpleasant recollections. It deeply damaged my ability to trust people, which had an influence on my personal life. When my sisters heard this, they started to cry and apologized more. However, in spite of their sincere apologies, I didn't feel the satisfaction or closure they may have hoped for. There were many different emotions at play, none of which could be properly handled with a few sobs and tears. Audrey, on the other hand, has been ecstatic about the possibility of repairing family bonds and has been riding a high. In addition, my mother made contact and acknowledged that although the meeting and the discussion that followed were great first steps toward healing, she realized that this was only the start of a protracted and maybe challenging path. She had been carrying a lot of weight on the possibility of her family reuniting after all these years of conflict and separation. There was a lot to take in. While nothing miraculous happened that night, it did manage to open a door that had been closed for a while. There's a long road ahead, with its fair share of obstacles and hard realities, but there may also be an opportunity for something approaching peace. I suppose that I satisfied everyone. I'm not overjoyed. Although I didn't feel as good as I had anticipated after receiving the answers I needed, I suppose that knowing that I wasn't alone or a liar makes me feel better.